All right, so picking back up with multiple choice question number 15. I rated this problem a 2 because even though we know sum means addition, we have not worked with radicals much. And when I say radical just means this guy, the square root figure. We haven't done work with radicals. We will do more in the spring. However, we have a calculator and we can type it in. So if I type in 2 square root of 54, if you're having trouble typing a square root, it is second x squared on the left side. So if I type in 2 square root of 54 plus, because it says sum, 2 square root of 6, then I know what I'm looking for is 19.59591. At this point, I can just type in answer choices until I find whichever one gives me the same decimal. So if you type in each of these answer choices, the answer choice that will give you the same decimal, that same 19.59, blah, 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 is answer choice 4. So if I type in 8 radical 6, I also get 19.59591. So even though we have not done a lot of work with radicals, you can convert them to a decimal just to figure out which ones match. If this was free response, you might be in a little more trouble. But if it's multiple choice, don't worry about turning things into decimals and then just playing a matching game. 16. We have two functions, f of x and g of x. They are both graphed on the same grid. And they ask us what the solutions are to when f of x equals g of x. This is putting together things from a few different units, but we know from systems of equations that solutions happen when two lines intersect, right? In systems of equations, we were looking for the intersections. So even though one of these are both functions, and even though one of them has this x squared, we know that what we are looking for is where do these intersect. So once again, I'm going to go to my handy dandy y1, y2, my favorite place to be. And I'm going to put f of x in y1, x squared minus 5x minus 14. I'm going to put g of x in y2, x plus 2. And then I'm going to look for where they intersect. I could visually look at my graph. If I'm visually looking at the graph, however, it might be hard to tell exactly where those intersections are. We will use the button that's called trace a little bit more in January, but for now, we haven't used trace too much. So if I want to see what the solutions are, then maybe I'll just go to my table and see, okay, I know the intersections are when the y values are the same. In your table, you should notice that there are two places where these functions intersect. The first one happens when x is negative 2. When x is negative 2, y1 and y2 are both 0. And then the next intersection happens, if we scroll down, when x is 8, y1 and y2 are both 10. So these are our two intersections, which means the two solutions to the equation are negative 2 and 8, because those are the two places where the functions intersect. So remember, solution means intersection if we're dealing with two different equations, even if those are equations we haven't worked much with already. Number 17, if x equals 4a squared minus a plus 3 and y equals a minus 5, then which polynomial is equivalent to the product of x and y? Polynomial is maybe confusing, and there's a lot of letters here. However, we know what equivalent means. We know what product means. product means multiply. And we know equivalent means same solutions. So the lift here is, since we're looking for the product of x and y, what this is asking us to do is take x, 4a squared minus a plus 3, and multiply it by y, a minus 5. And it's asking us to multiply these two things together and figure out which answer choice that gives us. Now, we're going to learn how to do this in the spring. It is very fun. I love it. It's called distribution between a trinomial and a binomial. However, for now, we can, if you can manage to write this part, you know that it's product, so you know it's multiply, then you can let your calculator take over. However, to let our calculator take over, we just need to turn all these a's into x's. So I'm going to put this in my y1. And in y2, I am going to do our favorite activity. I am going to put in all of the answer choices, once again, making the a's x. And I'm going to look for which answer choice makes my tables match. So if I do that, I'll let you pause the video and do it yourself quickly. But the answer choice that will make our tables match is 5 plus 3 is answer choice 4. So answer choices 1, 2, and 3 will not make your tables match. But if you put answer choice 4, once again using x's, we need to use x or our calculator gets overwhelmed. If you type the problem into y1 and you type answer choice 4 into y2, you will see in your table that y1 and y2 are identical, and so the question is equivalent to answer choice 4. This is the same trick as some earlier ones. However, this one is a little bit more challenging because you need to decipher what they mean by polynomial. You have to figure out the product, and they put in an a, which makes it a little more confusing. But same trick as always. So usually that trick is usable a few times on this test. Keep your eye out for it and make sure you're comfortable setting it up. What is an equation of a line that passes through 3, 7 and has a slope of 2? All right, the minute I see passes through, we know that lines are just the set of all of the solutions to an equation. So if it passes through the point 3, 7, we know that when x is 7 and x is 3 and y is 7, the equation must be true. So even if I don't worry about the slope yet, all I need to do to figure out this question is I'm going to plug in 3 for x and 7 for y and find out which of these equations is true when I use those values. If it's not true when x is 3 and y is 7, then it does not pass through that point. So for number 1, if I plug in 7 for y and 3 for x, this gives me 0 equals 0. That is true, so number 1 works. But I'm going to keep testing because it's possible that multiple will work, and then I'll have to think about the slope if that's true. For number 2, if I plug in 7 for y and 3 for x, I get 4 equals -8. That is false. So 2 does not pass through 3, 7. If I plug in 7 for y and 3 for x in 3, I get 14 is equal to 12. That is false. So 3 does not pass through 3, 7. And then lastly, if I plug in 7 for y in number 4, I get 10 equals 20, which is also false. So just by plugging in 3 for x and 7 for y, there was only one equation that made true. So we didn't even have to think about the slope. The only equation that goes through that point is answer choice number 1, because that's the only equation where 3 and 7 make the equation true. 19 says a lot of vocab that we do not know. Geometric sequence with a common ratio of -3. Geometric sequences and sequences in general are kind of fun. If you're looking for an extension, I do have a self-taught packet that I will give you in January, if this is something you want to bring home and play around with yourself. But because all of the vocab is unfamiliar to us, then on this one, save it for the end, make an educated guess. So I'm not going to show you this one. I will tell you that the correct answer is number 4, but sequences will maybe be asked about twice. And so I'm totally, and they're a little disconnected from anything we've learned so far. So if you don't know the language of sequences, let these be a thing you guess on. Number 20, we have done number 20. It is just difficult. When the equation 6 minus ax equals ax minus 2 is solved for x in terms of a, and a does not equal 0, the result is. So when they say solve for x, they are just asking us to get x alone in this equation. It's challenging because we have this a, but we can just use acceptable moves to get x alone. So first I'm going to get all of my x's together. I'm going to add ax on both sides. That gives me 6 equals, I have ax plus ax will give me 2 ax's. So if I add ax to both sides, I get 6 equals 2ax minus 2. Now I'm going to get my constants together. So I'm going to undo that minus 2 by adding 2. 4 equals 2ax. And now I want my x alone. I want to solve for x. So I'm going to divide out everything that is in front of it. When I divide that out, what I end up with is 4 divided by 2a equals x. And so here, for a second I thought I was done early, but I can simplify this further. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So this simplifies to 2 all over a equals x, which is answer choice 4. So we did do this in Unit 2. We did solving when you have multiple variables. This is kind of like isolating y. It just is difficult. It's a thing you know, but the problem itself was difficult. This is kind of like a spicy problem. So there's nothing you don't know here. It's just spicy. Number 21, which function has the zeros, -1, 3, and -4? This one, zeros, is another piece of vocab that you have not learned yet. However, we have 4 functions. This is a good opportunity to just plug them in and see if you can figure out, like compare and contrast, look at the table, think of what 0 might mean, look for zeros in your table, and see which one you think has zeros, -1, 3, and -4. So I'm going to encourage you, just plug the answers into your table one at a time. Look at them. See if you can figure out which one you think has the zeros, -1, 3, and -4. And then after you've done that, unpause. So now if you're unpausing, the correct answer is h of x, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the table for h of x, what you'll see is that for h of x, let's say we're looking at this part of the table. If you look at your table for h of x, at -4, y is 0. At -1, y is 0. and at positive 3, y is 0. So if they ask you for zeros, this is all you're looking for. Those are the 3 values of x that give you 0 for y. There's a lot more fun math that we'll do about zeros in the spring, but this is the type of question that don't give up just because you don't know the words. If they give you functions, stick them in there, poke around, see what you can notice, and make an educated guess. In this one, if you compared the tables, you may have noticed that -1, 3, and 4 are the places that give you 0 and y. So this is a possible educated guess. Number 22, the expression 5 to the a plus 2b is equivalent to. We love equivalence, but this problem is interesting because we have multiple variables, so we cannot use our table for this. However, we can still use our understanding of what equivalent means. Equivalent means if I have the same, equivalent means I have the same solutions, right? It's rewritten in a different way. So another option for the equivalence problems is choose your own values. What do I mean by that? In this problem, we have 2 variables. We have a and we have b. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my own simple small numbers for a and b. The only numbers I recommend you do not choose are 1, -1, or 0. But if you choose small numbers like 3 and 4, then you can test out and see which of these match. So I'm going to choose, just totally randomly, a equals 3, b equals 4. If I do that, my question becomes 5 raised to the power of 3 plus 2 times 4, right? So I'm just going to type that entire thing into my calculator. 5 raised to the power of 3 plus 2 times 4. All I did was substitute 3 and 4 in. And remember, I chose those myself. When I typed that in, I got this huge number, 48,828,125. So when A is 3 and B is 4, the question gives me 48,828,125. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the same values of A and B in my answers and see if I can get the same result. So for instance, if I plug in 3 and 4 as my A and B for answer choice A, then that would be 5 to the 3rd times 5 squared times 5 to the 4th. So I'm going to try typing that in. 5 to the 3rd times 5 squared times 5 to the 4th. When I typed that in, I got 1,953,125. That's not the same as what I got over here. So since it's not the same, it's probably not equivalent. When A was 3 and B was 4, I didn't get the same answer. So if you choose your own values and then plug them in everywhere, you should be able to find a match. For this one, the match that you will get, the answer choice that should give you a match is number 2. So if I do 5 to the 3rd times 25 to the 4th, I get this same exact number, 48,828,125. So again, this uses exponent laws, which we will learn in the spring. They are very fun, but don't be scared of what you don't know. You know equivalent. Choose your own values for A and B. See if you can make something match. If you get a match, you've got a match. You're in business. Number 23, arithmetic sequence. Sequences, I will tell you the correct answer for this one, but this is a good thing to guess unless you teach it to yourself. Otherwise, there's not really any language in here that we have learned. So for this one, The correct answer is -3. But sequences are a good thing to just leave as a guess for the spring. We'll learn them in Unit 5. And then 24, if you get a rate conversion problem, I put this as a number 2 because some middle schools teach this and some of them don't. But rate conversion problems, I'll teach you quickly right now because they're kind of straightforward. If they're easier than they look. So this says Joe is ordering water for his swimming pool. He determines the volume of his pool to be blah, 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 blah. If it's a rate conversion problem, you don't care about much. All you care about is, what does he want? He wants to correctly calculate the number of truckloads of water. So he wants an answer to be truckloads. Right? In these problems, the numbers do not matter. All that matters is the units. And the same way that you can cancel something from the top and the bottom of a fraction if it's a number, you can also cancel something from the top and the bottom of a fraction if it is units. So what do I mean by that? If I look at answer choice 1, notice that I have gallons on the top and the bottom. And so I can cancel out gallons. However, if I look at my other units, feet is on the top twice. Things that are on the top twice do not cancel. So I can only cancel something if it is both in the numerator and the denominator. In answer choice 1, gallons is in the numerator and the denominator. So that cancels out, but that's the only thing that cancels out. Let's look at my other examples. In answer choice 2, I have gallons on the bottom twice, I have feet on the top twice, so nothing cancels. In answer choice 3, I have feet on the top and the bottom in the numerator and the denominator, so the feet cancel out. However, gallons is on the top twice, so that's no good. Let's look at my fourth option. In my fourth option, I have gallons in the numerator and gallons in the denominator. So gallons cancel out. I also have feet, cubic feet in the numerator and cubic feet in the denominator. So cubic feet also cancel out. What I'm left with, if I ignore everything that canceled and I ignore all the numbers, I don't care about numbers. I have truck load per one pool. That's what Joey wanted. Joey wants how many truckloads to fill his pool. So if everything else cancels in number 4 tells Joey how many trucks per pool. Nothing else cancels out to trucks per pool, just number 4. So if you get a unit problem, if they show up, they only show up once, but you can do these by just canceling out what's on the top and the bottom in terms of units and seeing which thing gives you what you want. So that's the end of multiple choice. My overall advice on multiple choice is there will be more things in free response where you're like, I have gotten this exact problem before. In multiple choice, you're going to get a lot of things that are adjacent, where you maybe know half of it. In this one, there were 11 problems where there was something you didn't know, but there was enough that you did know to get it right. So your goal in multiple choice should be to think strategically, look for what you do know and use that, and don't stress about the words you do not know. Just because it's not exactly something we've asked you does not mean you can't problem solve your way to the answer. If you use the answers, you use process of elimination, and you use your calculator wisely. And we will keep working on these strategies in January. But hopefully this video gave you a helpful starting point of how to think about things like solution, equivalent, and plugging in to be successful on multiple choice and not to be scared of things that you haven't seen before. Happy break.